to a lower body release today. So come and join us. We're going to start on the floor. I'm actually going to start on our backs for this. So bring yourself down to your mat, the floor, whatever you have available. And you're going to need enough space to be able to stretch yourself out in full length. So we're starting with our left leg out nice and long, and we're going to bring our right leg in. Interlace your hands and place them over your shin bone. So just make sure it's not too close to your knee. Underneath leg, if you can, little flex in the heel so the knee points to the ceiling, and then relax the leg. So it doesn't matter if it does flop out a little. And what we're going to do is take a big breath in, take a breath out, and really think of squeezing that knee into your chest. Be mindful that you're not letting the knee escape out towards your shoulder. You want that knee coming into your nose. Full breath in, full breath out. If this feels niggly for your back with the bottom leg extended, just bring that foot flat onto the floor and it will give your back a little bit of protection. So if your back's feeling a little bit tender, fine to keep that underneath foot on the floor. If not, with the leg extended, you'll find you get a little bit more space across the front of the groin and across the front of the hip flexor. So we're still breathing, still squeezing. We're going to take 2 more full breaths. Last one. From here, we're going to release the same hand as the long leg, and the hand that's on the shin bone is going to let your knee drop out towards your ear. Now, your underneath leg can stay extended here, but it's quite tricky sometimes to keep the weight central. So if you prefer, bring the underneath leg up so you're in that half a frog, and then again, you'll find a nice stretch across the front of the thighs. If you prefer to keep the leg long, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to take that little half butterfly just to feel a little bit more of an opening across the front of my body. Full breath in. Keep squeezing that knee towards the armpit. Full breath out. Last one, full breath in. And full breath out. From here, we're going to extend the underneath leg away from us and bring the lifted leg into a tabletop position. Opposite hand comes across the outside of the thigh, and the hand that was holding onto the legs can open out nice and wide. From here, use your hand to guide the leg over your torso and keep the back shoulder connecting to the floor. Find to look to that back hand and find a beautiful rotation through the body. If it feels like you would like a little bit more stretch and twist, bring the back hand into a goalpost position. And as long as that back shoulder stays on the floor, you can play around with how much you let the leg take the weight over the body. We're breathing and releasing, breathing and releasing, breathing and releasing. Very nice. Bring yourself all the way back to center. Leg starts in the chest, and then we place the foot down on the floor and let it go long away from us. And it should feel like the leg you've just stretched is about 10 meters longer than your other leg. It might be a slight exaggeration, but we're going to take that freeness on the opposite side now. So bring the opposite leg into the chest, interlace the fingers, pressing through the shin bone, not the knee itself, and trying to keep that knee as parallel as possible. If you need to, a little bit of external rotation or flop out on the underneath leg is fine. It's actually quite nice if you can keep the kneecap towards the ceiling so that both legs are parallel, but not the end of the world if it feels nicer to relax the underneath leg. And as before, if your back doesn't like the bottom leg in extension, bring the foot flat to the floor and you just will find a little bit of a reprieve for that lower back area. So find that sweet spot for yourself. Full breath in. Full breath out. Full breath in. Full breath out. Full breath in. And full breath out. When you're ready, release the opposite arm. Same arm as leg, move your knee out to the side, finding that external rotation. Again, if it's feeling like it's really nice for you with the leg extended, keep the leg extended. If you prefer Keep that half butterfly. You can, of course, keep the foot flat, but I find that rocks me over to the side. So if you had your foot flat and knee facing the ceiling, it's probably easier to actually open that knee out and find that stretch across the front of the groin. Breathing in, breathing out. Trying to relax into it as much as you can, but keeping that squeeze of the knee in towards the ear and the shoulder. Full breath in. Full breath out. Full breath in. And full breath out. Extend the underneath leg back long. Bring the bent leg back to tabletop. From here, outside hand crosses over the outside of the thigh. Opposite arm is either long or into your cactus, and use the weight of the leg to cross over your midline. Look to your back hand if you can, and find that rotation. Try not to let the shoulder ping off the floor. You do want to keep the shoulder in contact with the floor. Breathing and breathing. Breathing and breathing. Good. 3 more breaths. And then when you're ready, bring yourself back to center. Stretch out the other leg and just let yourself be relaxed on the floor for a moment. Full breath in. Full breath out. Hopefully it feels like there's a little more space through your hips, through the front and back of the hips, and also through the lower back as well. From here, we're going to bring our left foot up. So foot is still flat on the floor, knee points to the ceiling. And then our right leg, the ankle is going to cross over the thigh bone, and we're flexing that heel. Try to be square through your hips. And if this is enough of a stretch, feel free to keep that bottom leg on the floor. Otherwise, we're reaching our hands long to the bottom thigh and lifting that leg off to take a figure 4 stretch. This is one of my favorite go-to stretches. This is a brilliant stretch through pregnancy and through postpartum, especially as our body shifts and changes, and inevitably through feeding, whether bottle or formula, we find ourselves seated, we find ourselves tired, we find ourselves in places we would not necessarily pop ourselves just to keep Bubba comfortable. So finding the external rotation, finding space for the top of the leg, but also finding space for the hips and the back. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Try to think of keeping your weight centered on your tailbone and almost pressing this foot across the body. Full breath in, full breath out. Can you scoop your shin bone a little closer to your rib cage? And if you start to feel pins and needles, that's your body telling you it's time to come out. So just when you're ready, bring yourself out, bring both feet flat to the floor. In between sides, we're going to come to our cactus position, take a little rock and roller through our lower back and our pelvis, just finding that mobility. And you can keep it small range, you can keep it large, you can take it slow, you can make it dynamic, however it feels. And when you're ready, opposite leg, think of the ankle crossing over the thigh bone, staying centered on your tailbone, so your weight isn't on one side of the tailbone or the other. As and when you're ready, if it's available, pick up the leg. If it's too much to pick up the underneath leg, scoot yourself closer to a wall, to a coffee table, to your sofa, and you can put this leg against the wall, coffee table, sofa, whatever you like, which just allows a little bit more relaxation in this position if it's feeling a little challenging or activating anywhere you don't want it to. Full breath in, full breath out. Full breath in, full breath out. See if you can think of high-fiving this foot across your body a little more, just getting into that stretch a little deeper. You'll find you find your own sweet spots, so have a play around with crossing the leg over and then bringing it back and working out where it is you really need to be to get the most out of this for yourself. Breath in and out. Again, if you find pins and needles at any point, that's your body telling you you've had enough. So don't be afraid to come down and come out of this at any point. Feet flat on the floor. I'm going to lift my arm high, hand across my body just to roll myself onto the side. I'm going to bring myself into almost like I was sat on a chair and the chair just fell over. So from here, my top foot is coming into my top hand and I'm sliding my thigh bone back. So I'm finding a stretch across the front of my quad. From here, try not to let yourself slide into the floor with the torso. Stay lifted and think of keeping your knee at the same height as your hip so the knee isn't elevating or dropping down. From here, full breath in. As you breathe out, scoop your pubic bone underneath you while at the same time pressing your thigh bone away from you. And there's a sweet spot to find whether you scoop your heel into your bottom or whether you find space in between your heel and your glutes. And finding that stretch across the front of the thigh. Stay open through the back shoulder if you can. And try not to let the hip roll back. We want to stay hip stacked on top of one another as much as possible, which is why this front leg at a right angle behind the knee and in front of the hip just gives us that little bit of extra stability so that we're not overly trying to balance. We're able to really get into that stretch around the front of the leg and the thigh. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and breathing out. When you're ready, relax that leg, bring it back in, and we're going to bring ourselves to the other side. You might find it's easier for you just to roll side to side, but just so that you can see exactly what it is Sam and I are doing, we'll stay facing you. So, knees are up, right angle in front of the hip, right angle behind the knee, top foot in your hand. Let your head relax. Thigh bone scoops back, pubic bone scoops forward. There's a fallacy that we need the knee to be behind the line of the hip to find a quad stretch, and that's not actually true. If you're tight, you might find you get a perfectly good quad stretch with the knee slightly forward of the hip. So it's not about getting the heel to the butt or the knee behind you. How are you getting there? Find the scoop through the front of the pelvis, thigh bone back. Do you need to press the heel towards the butt, or do you need to maybe find space between the heel and the glute? Lengthening rather than condensing to find your stretch. Full breath in and out. With every breath, think of lengthening your thigh bone, scooping your pubic bone. Full breath in, full breath out. You might even find you get a little stretch out for the deltoid, front of the shoulder. Full breath in and full breath out. Good. Bring the knees together. And from here, we're going to press ourselves to sitting. We're going to find our legs extended out in front of us. So this feels a little different for everybody, depending on how your hamstrings and your back feel. So if you need to soften one knee to find a stretch on the other leg, that's fine. And I want you to try and start with finding a heel flex here. Depending on how tight your calves are, sometimes a heel flex takes it out of the hamstring and puts it into the calf. So if you need to find a point, that's fine. If you can have both legs long, great. Lifting up nice and tall and just finding a little press forwards and back. A little press forwards and back. And it's this hinge at the hip, forwards and back. Good. From here, we're going to take ourselves one leg out, two legs out. And I don't mind how wide this is for you, so if it's particularly narrow, that's fine. If you have more facility available for you, don't be afraid to use that full facility. So we want to find a nice stretch out for the inner thighs. From here, roll forward onto your sit bones, place the hands in front of you. And we're just going to breathe. Full breath in, full breath out. If this is way too intense, grab yourself a yoga block or a couple of cushions, or find yourself a small stool to sit on. The elevation of the hips will mean that you're still able to find a stretch. If you don't have anything like that to hand, then do bend one leg in, and then switching to the other leg halfway through. We should be feeling a nice stretch. Is nice the right word? Through those inner thighs. Good. From here, we're going to start to add a little bit of side flexion. So breathing in, growing tall. Breathing out, finding some side flexion. Breathing in, growing tall. Breathing out. Know here that there's a switch between your hamstrings and your inner thighs. So if you're particularly narrow, you might actually find this firing through your hamstrings rather than your inner thighs, which is not incorrect. Just know the further that you can find that openness through the legs, the more that this will actually fire through those inner thighs. Last one. Good. From here, we're going to give ourselves a little bend, a little shuffle. We're going to help ourselves shuffle, shuffle, shuffle those legs all the way in, all the way in. One leg into a half butterfly, keeping this leg straight. Now we're coming back to work more on that hamstring stretch. So we're going to place the fingertips in front of us, and I want you to think of sticking your bottom out behind you. Yeah, it should feel like you get a nice little hamstring stretch. The further you're able to hinge forward, thinking of kicking your butt out behind you and keeping your back long, biomechanically, the larger stretch you're going to have, and the more this is going to feel like a hamstring stretch. Breathing in. Breathing out, breathing in, and breathing out. When you're ready, swapping legs, fire the other heel out, bring the other leg in. Full breath in, full breath out. I always have one leg that feels entirely different to the other leg. So there's always going to be one side that potentially feels tighter or freer than the other. So don't panic if that's the case. We're generally not symmetrical from side to side. And even though your hips are connected, think of them like your eyebrows. Sisters, not twins. And when you're ready, we're going to fold the knees in. We're going to find a 4-point kneeling position. We're just going to find movement of our hips from side to side. So just find that movement from side to side, breathing, lengthening. Press into the hands, tick the toes over, press back, and let's lift into a downward dog. I don't mind if your knees are soft, just to find that kick out for the back. If you can, work towards lengthening those legs. Let your armpits be long, looking towards the center of your legs. Little pad right knee and left knee, just walking it through. Last two. Last one. Hold the legs as long as you can, and then we're just going to take a little double knee bend and stretch. Last three. Last two. Last one. When you're ready, gently walk your feet to your hands or your hands to your feet. And we're going to hang heavy over both knees. From here, see if you can just give me a little lift up onto the top of the fingertips and a lower. Little lift and lower. Last one, little lift and lower. And as and when you're ready, we're going to keep our torso heavy, head the heaviest portion of that. Scoop, tuck, roll, lift, reset, and stand. If you feel a little lightheaded, that's completely normal, but maybe find a spot in the room to focus on. So you have spent a long time on the floor. Hopefully you're feeling nice and loose through your hips, loosey-goosey through the hips and legs, and this will help make you feel a lot better for the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time.